Hello and welcome back. Happy Thursday. Today we will be doing two things. We will be doing a rundown of Dev Diary 157, and we will also be completing the Victoria 3 community survey. Now, for this survey, or for any survey, or for any sort of group input, it is generally better to put in your own input before you see the opinions of others, and generally you get more qualitatively good opinions. And so if you're interested in doing this, we will put this in the link below. We will put it in the pinned comment, because generally speaking, what studies have found is that in meetings and such, when people write down their opinions beforehand and then discuss an idea, they tends to produce better outcomes than if people, kind of present their ideas immediately, because there tends to be a bandwagon effect. So even though we will be going through this ourselves, we would advise that if you are interested in doing the survey, you do it before you watch us going through it. Now, we will die on this hill, and by die on this hill, I mean die reading this dev diary. This dev diary is so long. We made jokes the past 2 weeks about, oh, it takes so long to scroll, look how long this dev diary is, oh, we're scrolling forever, and now we're stalling for time because the scrolling takes so long. Look how long this scrolling takes. Jesus, there's a lot of scrolling. Oh my god, how much scrolling are we going to get through? And about here is where the last two dev diaries have maybe ended in terms of length. And now we have to stall for more time because the joke never gets old, but this dev diary is really long, so we keep stalling for time, and the longer we stall, the more we stall, and the staller we maul, the more we go. And then we have, oh, this is the end of the dev diary. Nope. Not quite yet. We have discussions about books. And then there's the end of the dev diary. So this will be very long. So if you've got something and you want to digest this in like podcast format or something like this, maybe have a workout, go on a walk, take this with you. I have no idea, but this is probably going to be an hour and a half. So, suit up, do that whole shindig, because we're here for a time. This is gonna be a very long dev diary. But let's get into the community survey first. Also, I'd advise having water, because, we're gonna be here for a time. All right. Hello, community. Thank you for playing Victoria 3. You're welcome. We wanted to make your experience with the game even better, and to do that, we want to understand who our players are, what other games they enjoy, and how you engage with Victoria 3. Okay, fair enough. Whether it's diving deeper into the Victorian era or simply enjoying the game mechanics, your feedback will help us shape a future development and better understand how to improve your experience with the game. It's a longer survey. But we appreciate your time and input. So, just right off the bat, I'm really actually curious. I hope that they release the internals of what other games Victoria 3 players played, because I'd be keen to know, because I think Victoria 3 is quite divergent, in particular in its approach to military, and that's often a divisive point within the community. I think, generally speaking, the framing of Victoria 3, or the design vision, is that the military is here to support the economy and the politics, rather than the other way around, which is the design vision for most strategy games. And so I'm really curious how much war games we'll see, versus how much other economic simulator type games or city builders or this type of stuff we'll see, and how that might compare to a different game that's a little bit more war based. So just off the bat, that's the first thing that comes to mind in terms of this. But let's get into this without too much ado. Are we at least 16 years old? Yeah, okay. We're not going to read the privacy policy. We'll assume that they're not scraping anything, because I don't want to put you guys through the oh no, not like this. This is where I have to admit to everyone that I shouldn't be looking at spreadsheets, but we are, in fact, between the ages of 30 and 34. Where do we live? We live in North America. What is your gender? We are male. And then continuing on, how often do you play video games? Every day. Let's see. Several times a week, we'll put. They don't have an everyday option, but I imagine that this is pretty high up there. Generally speaking, Paradox games, I think, are not played by casuals very frequently, and so I would imagine that these are the two most common options. I'm so curious about the people who are less often than several times a year that would also take the time to answer this survey. There's going to be a significant selection bias here too, right? Because the people you anticipate are responding to the survey are probably the regulars anyways. The people who only play once a month Are they going to be reading a survey? I think it takes a very special type of person to follow all the news about the game and then play it like zero, or play it like once a month. What genres of game do you generally play? At this point, it's mainly grand strategy, but we'll kind of put in a couple other ones. We don't really... I guess we play some amount of city builders, turn-based games. That's kind of... yeah, it's kind of this. And this is kind of what we were getting at, where I think that for a lot of other grand strategy games, you're going to see less city builders and less simulation management, and for Vicky 3, you're going to see a lot more of that. Have you ever played the Total War? What? That's such a... are they planning on putting pitched battles in the game? Alright, so we've played a few of these. I don't know if I've played Rome. Pretty sure this is it for us here. Have you played Age of Empires? Hell yeah, brother. Let's go. Have you played Civilization games? Yeah, bro. We started with Civ 2, so making us feel old. Look, they didn't even put Civ 7 on there. The disrespect. Put some respect on that name. Just kidding. Civ 7 was a disaster. Okay. Have you played any of the following Anno games? So this is the type of game that I would expect to see a little bit more from Victoria 3. Anno 1800. Specifically for the enjoyers of... what is it? Specifically for the enjoyers of the era. Is Pax Romana out? I didn't even realize this was out. God, it's been a whirlwind. I think these are the only ones we've played, though. I think we own 2070, but then is like stupid EA and their like stupid launcher. And we couldn't, when we bought it, we couldn't get it to work, and then we never tried again, and then we were just like, forget about or was it Activision? I forget what it was, but it was someone's stupid launcher that made you do something that we didn't want to do. We've not played Frostpunk. Oh no. Which of these have you played? Okay, so here is some spiciness here. We've played Dwarf Fortress. We've had Disco Elysium and Terra Invicta recommended to us so much in the Victoria 3 community, so I would not be shocked if those were kind of high hits. But I think it's just this. I think this is just this. These are a lot of more recent games, and generally speaking, more recently, we've just kind of been hyper-specialized and not really played as much variety as... actually, as much as I would like. Just if I do a variety stream or variety content, I just don't get any views, so... yeah. How often do we play grand strategy games? Several times. How many hours do you have in each of these? Well, we actually don't have a lot of Victoria 2 hours. We have more than 1,000 hours here. Let's a quick look at our Steam, actually. Okay, just making sure we're not showing off our Steam, because we have some secrets in there. But we're over 400 hours for CK, so not the most CK hours. And then... let's take a look in here. Also, importantly, over 36. We have over 100 CK2 hours. Hearts of Iron, I imagine we're going to be in 100 to 500 here. We have over 1,000 EU hours. And then Stellaris. Stellaris, I actually have no idea. I'm guessing it's over 200, but not much over 200. Really kind of very specialized here, Victoria 3. I'm surprised they're not asking this of Victoria 3, how many you have played, because, or maybe this is in the next slide, because I would have expected that to be kind of the most important question from their perspective. 250 Stellaris hours, so we will put that in and head on to the next one. I said we'll head to the next one. Which of the following Paradox Grand Strategy games are your favorite? Probably Victoria 3 and EU5, which we can't put down here because we've actually played it. Between these, Stellaris, I generally have a lot of fun when I play Stellaris. It's just like it seems Stellaris doesn't have a lot of content tourists. In terms of people who make content for games, people who just like casually play Stellaris is much less the norm. Like the Stellaris players play Stellaris, and they change the game so much, it feels really bad to try and make videos on it. So we're probably going to do some Stellaris when stuff comes out for it, though. What do you most enjoy about strategy games? Generally speaking, learning about systems and how systems interact. I don't think that's going to be on here. Okay, this is kind of the ones for us, which explains the spreadsheets. When did you start playing Victoria 3? On release day. How did you discover Victoria 3? How did we discover Victoria 3? I'm not entirely sure. It wasn't recommended. It must have been... It was probably Gaming Media. Or the Steam Store. What made you interested? Generally speaking, political and economic simulation. And I think that this is what Victoria 3 really, really stands out in. And then we also enjoyed other grand strategy games from Paradox, but these are kind of the big ones. Why do you continue to play Vic 3? It does provide unique challenges and more difficult and complex. I think that these are the ones that, yeah... Understanding large-scale world dynamics, too. I think these are the ones that generally make Victoria 3 really interesting. In particular, the politics and the economics, I think we can only pick 2. We'll take out unique challenge, because this is ambiguous, and it's specifically the complexity that we care about. How do you usually set goals for Victoria 3? Generally speaking... it has to do with memes and what people vote for, but, let's see. We'll call it mechanical challenges, and taking things how they come, I suppose. Which game systems do you engage in the most? Change, pick 3. This is there's like 2 ways to answer this question, like which do you find the most engaging, and also which do you actually spend the most time on. Like, we actually spend a decent amount of time on war, it's just not as like interesting to me. So we'll put it like this. Colonization just like occupies very little time, but I think that this is the strength of Victoria 3 in particular. So how do you typically approach a playthrough of Victoria 3? Yeah, I mean, generally we approach it from the econ side of things. Prioritize social reforms through law changes. I mean, we generally kind of just do all this stuff. I guess we'll just put regular agree. Territorial expansion, we'll call it moderate. Grow or lead a power block. I like, actually kind of don't like the way these questions are phrased. This question requires an answer. We're working on it, dog. I enjoy dominating trade through companies and diplopacts. Yeah, you just do all of this stuff simultaneously. We're actually, like, less concerned with the what-ifs, though. I roleplay my country in line with historical events. Kind of a little bit, but not too much. I play with mods to customize my experience. Generally not, but a little bit. I enjoy ensuring the well-being... Yeah, nope. What usually gets in the way of how you want to play Victoria 3? We generally understand the game pretty well, so it's not unclear and confusing. Too much structure or restriction, lack of clear goals or direction, the pacing feels too slow, the pacing feels too fast, limited options for roleplay or narrative freedom, limited tools for large-scale management. I think nothing in particular. We'll just call this, like, other. I feel like some stuff gets in the way of how we want to play Victoria 3, but it's like kind of not this stuff. Actually, it's just the Diplo play, isn't it? The Diplo play is like our personal enemy, and so that's, I guess, what we would say at this point, more than anything. And I guess to a lesser extent, lack of narrative options or something like this. Specifically, like, it is the fact that, like, a lot of runs just feel very similar, and I guess we would put that under roleplay or narrative freedom, but really we want there to be emergent mechanical reasons for why different, like, nations feels like, different, and that's kind of not the case right now. How difficult do you find these mechanics? I don't like the wording of this because I think that we can either answer it like how we view it from our perspective or answer the abstract. I think we'll try and answer it from the abstract. I think economy is fairly difficult. I don't think it's extraordinarily difficult because in order to get like you can get a lot of... There's like the systems have a lot of depth, but even if you don't understand it at a very deep level, with some like really simplified heuristics and basic understanding, you can do pretty well. Politics is generally kind of easy. There's a lot of cheese you could do, but if you don't do cheese, it's like kind of easy, but sometimes you run into a little bit. There's some back and forth, this type of thing. We're trying to answer from the perspective of how we think the game is like in a vacuum. Diplomacy and diploplays aren't exactly hard, but we don't like them. We'll put them easy. Society and population management. Generally, this is kind of a hands-off-ish system, so we'll put it at easy, but part of this intertwines with the political system. Warfare, land, and naval, we'll put this at easy, but sometimes you have to micro the spaghetti. Colonization and expansion, we'll also put it easy. Something like this. It's certainly fairly straightforward, so just kind of a lot of middling answers here. I don't think Victoria 3 is like an especially hard game to play with and engage and like be successful in and beat the AI, but I think that it's a hard game to like understand at a higher level, but that higher level is just really unnecessary and gratuitous for achieving a lot of goals. So what usually makes you stop a Victoria 3 playthrough? A lot of it is I guess the game does feel less eventful after some time. A lot of it is performance reasons. The game slows down. And then, like, I guess the other part of it is, like, we can't, from a content perspective, doing deep runs is just a bad idea. Although we haven't published any Victoria 3 gameplay in a little bit, because we've been focused on EU5. How interested are you in history? We'll put very. How interested are you in following historical periods? I think that we're generally a little bit more interested in like early modern, like so Middle Ages, like post-Crusades type of era. So we'll put extremely for here, and then we're very interested in industrial. Actually, we'll put extremely here, and then generally speaking, not too interested in the World War stuff. How do you describe your knowledge of the following historical periods? Ugh, yikes. I think that we'll kind of just call it intermediate. I think relative to a lot of the people who I guess play these games, we would probably be pretty average. Maybe a little bit more knowledgeable about specifically 19th century because of all the Victoria 3 hours, and also we've done like we've done research in the background on these things, so we'll say we're a little bit less knowledge. Actually, I know really not a lot about World War I, but World War II we'll put some basic understanding in. How interested are you in topics within the 19th century? Diplomatic conflicts and alliances. I do think that this is interesting. Military strategies and doctrines, a little bit less interesting. Technological and industrial advances, pretty interesting. Trade, logistics, and supply chains. I think that, generally speaking, games like underrepresent like logistics and supply and like this type of stuff because it's a little less interesting than whacking two armies together, but this is like really like, I think, one of the most important things for military. And it's often not represented. We'll put economics pretty high up. Politics, we like to see some of the politics stuff. Social and cultural developments. Now, for example, I think that this would be like a very in the abstract, but I really hope they add more of this stuff to Victoria 3. And we're pretty interested in like how colonization works and this type of thing. Just generally not as interested in the military side of things. How interested are you in the following topics in World War I? I suppose we're slightly interested in a lot of this stuff. But the technology stuff, I guess trade and logistics, economics, and something like this for World War I. It's kind of a question that doesn't really port over that well. Which aspects of history would you like to see Victoria 3 represent more strongly in the future? So this one is a little bit of a vibe. So I think that they're kind of always approaching the, like, you can refine the economy, but I think that, here's the thing, is like, this is like the heart of Victoria 3 to some extent, and they're going to keep doing this like no matter what. And so to some extent, I think that we want to make our votes matter as much as possible. So we're going to choose the things we want most, even if it means not picking 5. And so we would prefer logistics. We would like an endgame crisis. We would like a social and cultural change type of thing. And then we would love some, yeah, I guess we are picking 5 here. Some of this stuff in here. So I guess national and cultural identity, we can maybe pick off a little bit, because really we're interested in like having a like secondary layer on which to judge yourself other than economics, and I think that culture would be an interesting one. And I think there being an endgame crisis or a build up to war would really give a strong narrative structure to runs where there's currently really not one. And so, and then we would prefer to see better logistics, or logistics more keenly represented in game. Community survey. What types of content or playstyles would you like to see more of Victoria 3? Country-specific flavor and events, maybe. More freedom to experience constraints, more mechanical depth and complex systems. I guess we would like to see more mechanical depths and complex systems. We can select up to 3. Is there anything else you'd like to share about your Victoria 3 that we haven't asked about? This we can get very long with, but since we're recording, we don't necessarily want to really spend too much time with, but I guess we'll make 2 points. I would like to see the Diplo play rework. I would also like to see a cultural system as a metric of success. And then I would also like to see the stuff that is underneath the surface better represented to the player in terms of their progress. So like your literacy increasing because of a decision you made. I think that this would specifically help a lot with beginner players. So I would like to see the beneath the surface stuff better represented to players. In terms of showing connections between their actions and consequences that are long-term. Basically give more feedback where agency is being shown. We'll put utilized on long-term systems. So that'll be our thing there, and we'll put done, and then we'll say we finished the survey. Okay. We'll just click continue. And I think that's it. Powered by research, indeed. All right, so onward and upward to the dev diary. Man, this is going to be like 2 hours long. Victoria 3, dev diary 157. I will die on this hill. Is on not supposed to be capitalized? I think on's not... Oh, there's like... I think there's some exceptions, but what is it? The type of word that refers to you in relation to something else. I want to say it's a preposition, but that sounds wrong. But those don't get capitalized in titles. So I think on's not supposed to be... Anyways, this is like... we don't need to focus on that. So, we will say, good day, Victorians, good day. That's our first good day that we've seen. But we get a happy Thursday. Let's go. Capitalized as it should be. This is Chris, narrative designer, filling in for Victoria, I suppose. And this will be my first ever diary. Hitting it off strong with the happy Thursday with capitalization. Salutes to you. So welcome to Dev Diary 157, where you will be presented with a variety of hills within the upcoming immersion pack, Historical Awakening. As you read about the upcoming content, dear dear player and reader, you may consider which hill you would most prefer to die on. Our first hill today is Mount Lovken, the Black Mountain of Montenegro. We have sensed, even up here in our lofty Wizard's Tower, a general desire to add more variety to the different countries to the way different countries play in Victoria 3. Yes, this is a very, very strong one because, generally speaking, most countries, after kind of their opening salvo, they just all play identical. But I think that this might be the same to some extent with Monty content, except for Montenegro, after a little bit of review, just has that absolutely insane law for workforce ratio. Which gives a lot less birth rate, but I still think it's really strong. The Montenegrin campaign is an experiment designed to both represent a country's vibrant and violent history, the two V's, and to provide a particularly unique experience. We've selected Montenegro in the hope that there will be something satisfying about climbing from such extremely humble beginnings towards a great modern nation. You'll begin in dire straits, the treasury is draining fast, a measly 2 spare units of arable land, yikes, and a woefully low standard of living. As in history, women are working the field so that the men can fight, but during peacetime this leaves a huge number of not so strictly employed men eating away at the resources. Starvation is put off by the aid from Russia, delivered through the Austrian port by the coast. The literacy rate in... Jesus. The literacy rate in game is 0.6%. This is likely above the historical figure, as the Nejegos family personally educated a small clique while they themselves were educated abroad. Pedar II acquired the nation's first modern printing press in 1830, which he used to print his own poetry and possibly the Bible. Times is hard. Times is hard. You say it, brother. There will be no spamming iron mines until you pass the laissez-faire. No iron mines until laissez-faire. However, there are a few modifiers and law variants that may help you to survive. Please note, as always, the exact numbers are subject to change. And of course, the UI. Shame on you for just saying numbers. You're not going to say UI too. You gotta throw the bag at it. You gotta throw the bag at readers here. You gotta be like, everything's subject to change. It may not even be the same game anymore. Okay, but it will be. Off to a rough start. Looks like we have a lot of authority, a little bit of negative in the money, and the state of Montenegro. We will have this flavor that we have up in here, introducing our Montenegro start, and we will see shake the world or die trying. Or try the world and shake trying, or shake trying. While the women in the fields law is active, Montenegro will have more soldiers and workers available, but its people were selfish. So the workers in the field law just seemed like absolutely insane, and we had to like double, triple, quadruple take it. But we will see that we get. If it's bad, maybe if these effects are bad, maybe it becomes not so good to be taking. We will see 50 years of minus 35% military wages. Great, this is a positive modifier. Minus 10% military goods cost. Great, this is a positive modifier. Extra gold reserve limit. Technically, this allows a lot less of an exploit, I think. Or is this... Actually, if this is a percentage modifier... Oh, if this is a percentage modifier... No, I think this is, how does this modifier work? If this is modifying a base value, this is bad. If this is not modifying a base value, instead this just makes Montenegro very insane for the, the exploit where you delete your debt. And the way that you do this is you turn up your PMs to the best PMs, and this increases your debt limit. And whatever your debt limit is, you can actually only have debt of 1 million more than this. And so what you do is you acquire all your debt, you get into the default zone, and then you turn all your PMs down. This will lower your debt limit because it lowers your GDP. And by virtue of lowering your debt limit, you effectively delete debt because of this ceiling on debt, and then you turn all the PMs back up. So the idea is you have maybe 100 million GDP, and then you turn down the PMs and you only have 70 million GDP. And so let's say that 100 million GDP gives you 50 million in debt limit or something like this, and then you turn it down to 70 million. So you went from 51 million in debt, you turn it down to 70, you go to 30 million in debt, or 31 million because it's 1 million over whatever your debt limit is. And then you turn your PMs back up, and now you have 20 million more debt to work with, or 30 million more, or however the numbers work. But, or is it 15 million more? We can't do math. Never do math when recording a video, especially in a one take. But with that said, if this is plus 1,000%, instead of doing this with 100, we do this with 1,000, and if it works like that, if it's a multiplicative modifier, then that actually turns this strategy way, way more on. We will see that we get negative wealth, education access. Who cares? We're planning on keeping them poor anyways. We get minting, negative minting. Okay, that's, I guess, a little bit annoying. And we get a tradition of killing tax collectors. Can't we bring it back where we will get a plus 200% consumption tax costs? That is a little bit uncomfortable, especially with the worst tax laws. Generally speaking, as the tax laws get better, proportionally, the amount you're getting off of consumption tax gets lower. But very often, when you're on the worst tax laws, it's going to represent a big portion of your tax income. So that is a little bit painful. Montenegro's law variants are terrible long-term, but they keep the country from starting at the beginning of the game. Are you sure about that? You sure about that? You sure about that? We have women in the fields, -4 standard of living for their lower strata, -8 standard of living for the middle strata, -2 expected SOL, -4 expected SOL. So in the net, you are actually... your expected SOL, or your real SOL, is decreasing by more than you're expected, so you're effectively getting extra SOL buffer. And here's the thing about population growth rate. Population growth rate, depending on how many modifiers you've stacked, is going to be the most between 10 and 15 SOL. Often you get above 15 SOL. This pulls you back down. Just when you thought you were out, they pulled you back in, and now you get better population growth rate. So after you kind of escape the opening salvo of being really low SOL and actually get your country running, this is going to increase your birth rate. Unless I'm mistaken, which I don't think I am, I believe SOL is going to inform birth rate and not wealth level. And so this is going to be something that increases your birth rate in some situations when you have really high SOL. But also, we get 30% workforce ratio, and we get -10% birth rate. So this is the doubling of the women in the workplace law in terms of the effects. The women in the workplace law is quite strong. Now, to be fair, the more workforce ratio you stack relative to birth rate, the worse it gets a little bit, just in terms of how the math works out, I believe. But the base workforce ratio is 25%. And so this means for every pop you have, you're going to have plus 30%, you're going to have more than double the amount of pops working relative to dependents at base values. If you have this in, you'll have 55% workforce ratio. So this means that kind of unquestionably, you're going to have the best GDP per capita. And the negative birth rate, okay, that's annoying, but if you look at things from the perspective, we would have to math this out, but I'm pretty sure the math checks out that this is going to be the best. If you look at it from the perspective of workers rather than population, when we have, let's compare this to women in the workplace, which gives 15% workforce ratio, right? When you have women in the workplace, you will have 40% workforce ratio, base 25% plus the 15%, right? So 40% in total. With this, you will have 55%. Now, let's call that an extra third. I know it's not an extra third, it's actually a little bit more, but let's call that an extra 33%. So we would have to be growing at a rate that is much bigger than the rate at which we are getting extra workforce, because if we get 100 pops, with the women in the workplace, and we get 133 pops, if we get 133 pops with women in the workplace, that's the same as getting 100 pops with women in the fields as it relates to the amount of pops that could work. Although dependent income is a factor in like this type of thing, but also birth rate is better, or I think it's easier to get more pops generally. I forget exactly the modifier when you have really low amount of pop at a location, and then there's also the overcrowding factor, but it's going to be a little bit better when you have lower pops as well, and so there's some factors there. If you have really low pop in particular, this happens in the US, but not many other places. But I think that you just get more pops. In terms of the amount of pops that are working, in terms of the math. We would have to take a closer look at it, and I think we've belabored it a little too much probably, but that is going to be one where I don't think that this is terrible long term. I guess we would have to maybe do math, but I think that also this extra standard of living balance might actually overcome the birth rate as well. which is another factor. So that law actually seems quite strong. We still see self-paternalism, where we will get +4 maximum social security investment, and we will get a special social security law where we will get armed force political strength, devout political strength, and landowner political strength. So this is a little bit of yuck. We will get extra workforce payments and plus 20% dependence income, plus 8% food security. Dependence income is nice. We actually will have less dependence with this law active. This probably seems okay, because this isn't... I think the other one decreases workforce ratio. I don't even know if this is bad. Are we locked in at level 4 or something, though? So this is bad because it juices up the IGs that we don't want, but I don't even know if that's really bad, like, overall as a social security law, so... How did such a situation come to be? As far as the Ottoman Empire was concerned, Montenegro was not an independent state, but a Christian group practicing religious freedom at the top of the mountain with a habit of killing tax collectors to the point where it was simply easier for everyone to just stop sending them. That is why Montenegrin rulers were given the title of Prince Bishop, and since bishops cannot marry, a rule tended to be handed down from one convenient nephew rather than a son. The Montenegrins, however, saw themselves as an independent Serbian state. With little arable land, they were forced to raid to survive. There was a tradition of headhunting, likely collecting the heads of Ottomans they killed in battle as trophies. To be fair, the Ottoman Pasha on the other side instructed his men to do the same. When some do-gooder, we hate those, Westerner came in to try and talk to both sides out of the practice, each side replied that they would love to stop cutting off the heads, but they would only consider it if the enemy stopped first. So the violence continued. They gotta stop first. We gotta cut off at least one more head with no response. The constant rage should have given the Ottomans an excuse to invade and end the rebels once and for all, but the great powers, particularly Russia, were protective of their fellow Christians. It was thus Montenegro's small size that allowed them to raid the Ottomans without facing oblivion. In a century where such antiquated violence within Europe would have normally escalated into full-scale war or multinational diplomatic crisis, the great powers insisted on guaranteeing Montenegro's independence. Meanwhile, the raids were not impactful enough on the greater empire for the Sublime Portes to justify disregarding Russia's request and exterminating Christians on the hill. For all their support, the great powers still made it clear that they would really, really appreciate it if Montenegro would behave themselves and shape up to something that looked like a modern state. To this end, the Montenegro campaign is divided by two journal entries, one about earning respect to the great powers, including transitioning into a formal monarchy, and the other is about raiding and pillaging the Ottoman lands, preferably until their empire is entirely destroyed. The player must balance the nation's future between these two paths. So we will have from rebels to nation, where we try and, get out of the practice, and then raiding, where we engage with the practice. Bring me more heads, of course. Looks like meat is back on the menu. My brethren. Okay, so we will have raiding is an income derived from theft. Our income from raiding is based on our raiding fervor multiplied by our army's power projection. Plus 5,000 is the most we can possibly earn from raiding, but that's a pretty nice ticket. Raiding fervor represents how often the tribes are permitted to raid, in addition to increasing our income. Raiding each 1% of fervor will also have the following effects: a little bit less improved relation speed, a little bit more damage relation speed, a little bit less legitimacy, yikes, extra radicals and loyalists from standard of living changes. Radicals and loyalists. Baby, did they bring back the freebies? Looks like they brought back the freebies. So, for a long time, you used to be able to stack a ton of modifiers for standard of living changes. We're starting to get to the point where, the recent history actually is starting to feel like the long past history. But you used to have different rates of radicals and loyalists from standard of living changes, which meant you could stack enough extra loyalists from standard living increases or minus radicals for standard living decreases, such that if you would yo-yo up and down, which you kind of naturally do a little bit to some extent just because of price fluctuations and pops being on the cusp of upgrading, so they just upgrade and downgrade this type of thing in terms of their SOL. And you used to just be able to get a ton of free loyalists. They put an end to that, and they're like, the radicals and loyalists will always be the same. And to be fair, this makes radicals and loyalists the same. However, if you know you're going to decrease an SOL, the thing to do is to decrease your rating fervor. And when you decrease in SOL, you will get fewer radicals. And then when you know you're going to increase in SOL, you can increase rating fervor to whatever extent you have agency over this as a mechanic. Which means you can print free loyalists. And by print free loyalists, I mean nitpick over a small system that's probably not going to reward you with that many loyalists, but you can do it. It's not against the rules. And this is something that's been kind of out of the game for a little bit here. We get discouraged rating, which I imagine discourages rating. We get decrease fervor by 25. And then we say bring me more heads and increases fervor by 25. Wow, this is so responsive, actually, to what you're doing. I think you... So at a certain point, you'll just be hitting the 5k no matter what, right? And if that's the case, you're actually just going to do this around the loyalists. And what you could do is you could actually tax around this. So what you do is you increase taxes and you discourage rating. And then you decrease taxes and you increase rating. And you just keep doing this so that you will just make your pop's SOL drop and increase, drop and increase, drop and increase. And you'll just print loyalists. And by print, I mean, get a very small amount. That's really not a lot, but you'll feel really smart. And that's what counts. Okay, so actually, maybe it's a decent amount. 2%. Okay, so Russian aid. This amount we receive depends on our relations with Russia, so I guess we're just constantly improving relations with Russia. They will send us some ducats. That's kind of buckets of ducats, but... for us at the start, and then it's kind of not going to be relevant, kind of like the rating as well. We could do some visiting of Moscow, and we can also do canonize ancestor here. Plus 20 legitimacy, decaying for 10 years. For only 15,000, that's so good. That's so good. Okay. To stop, try to stop raiding too early, and one nation will go bankrupt and starve. Raid too aggressively, and not only will legitimacy drop to the point of being unable to pass laws, but one relations may decrease with the great powers until one fails the rebels to nation journal entry, leaving no ally to guarantee Montenegro's independence against the Ottoman invasion. Womp womp. So don't want that. Along with the journal entry, here we have barbarians. Force the great powers to withdraw support. Oh no. Oh no. Along the journey towards civility, you may need the landowners, for once, in order to pass monarchy. Ain't that the truth? A chain of historical events can also help you along the way, as Prince Danilo makes it very clear he has no intention of becoming a bishop, and every intention of establishing himself as the monarch. The options beyond avoiding an ordination are getting married and going beyond Danilo's own known choices, though they suit the brash and uncompromising reputation that led to his assassination by fellow countrymen. Yay! Womp womp. And so we will have this event with him regarding the bishops. And he was really confronted by the need to marry to prove that he was certainly not a bishop and therefore a prince, and therefore Montenegro was a state, and therefore it deserved land and protection. Danica, though, or is there an R in there? Darinka, though, ostensibly not as wealthy as, nor as capable, nor carrying a high title compared to his other prospects, had the closest family ties in Montenegro, and perhaps he had something to do with this choice after all. So we will have Danilo, where marries Danica, or Darinka, and so we will have a wedding event, classic art. And continuing on, however you navigate Montenegro's precarious situation, you should succeed in the following Nijego's footsteps in establishing Montenegro as a state. The great powers will reward you with the land necessary to cease raiding and establish a functioning economy. Our favorite. But if you put down the rifle and stop raiding, feel free to trick them and continue raiding anyway. You will likely lose your ally against the Ottomans should they come knocking. Your only ally against the Ottomans is should they come knocking. But if you're strong enough, you could just print free loyalists. I'm too focused on that. That's too cute, and it's like it's probably not that big of a deal. But we will receive 2 provinces in Montenegro. Okay. We agree to stop raiding, reducing our income by blank. As a replacement for Russian aid, Russia will finance the foundation of our state treasury, permanently granting us 1,000 for minting. And that is pretty nice. Okay, so we can kind of get going. You could, of course, take land and keep raiding, but Russia will no longer guarantee your independence. If you intend to lay down the sword, you will likely be desirous of a port access to access the wonder of the world market. Definitely. You know what's interesting is Montenegro actually used to have port access at the start of the game, and this was before the world market or at the start of the game, when the game was released. And taking Montenegro was actually really strong, because having any state that was adjacent to big powers was really good, because it allowed you to trade a lot of goods for free just based on the base trading values. And Montenegro both cost basically 0 infamy to grab and was also next to the Ottomans and Austria, so it was actually a really nice place to take. But then it lost coastal access, so you weren't able to take it easily anymore. Here you may succeed where the family had failed, by convincing Austria you are trustworthy, certainly not a Russian puppet, and that there's no risk of giving Russia access to the Mediterranean. They may return the port of Cattaro, and therefore demonstrate the good sportsmanship and demand the same good sportsmanship they demanded from the Ottomans in recognizing you as a state. So we can kind of diplo and move our way in and get access to the coast. And once you have coast access in Victoria 3, it's all over. You just get to dominate the game. In terms of the metric for evaluating some of these hard starts is how hard is this? How easy is it to get to the coast? And so we have a flavorful way of getting to the coast. Finally, you may be able to complete the last of Peter and Danilo's ambitions. These men always saw themselves as Serbians. Indeed, Peter II's poetry speaks highly of the great deeds of Serbian knights at the Battle of Kosovo, from which legend says all Christian Montenegros are descended. Or all Christian Montenegro is descended. Should both states be free from the Ottoman subjugation and share a common border, the great Serbian nation can unite once again. Very cool. We will get to unite with Serbia if we fight Ottomans and release Serbia. Or actually, there's flavor in this patch that is conducive towards Serbia getting their own independence, right? So maybe that just happens naturally. On unification, there are options as to which nation's rules and laws should be taken precedence. Of course, you probably want to take your women in the workplace law. And from there is no limit to the ambitions of the family. Apologies for all my pronunciations. Perhaps all the way to the Eastern Crisis and Balkan Wars, forming Yugo, now a major unification. Very cool that that's a major unification too, so you can do that diplomatically. So that actually gives you a lot of teeth to be able to form Yugo. You know what's interesting too, is this is going to make Muslim HRE so much easier, actually. And I know what you're saying, Muslim HRE, what do you mean? Well, Central Europe is the HRE tag if you are a theocracy, or is it if you're a monarchy? I think it's if you're a monarchy. And if you are Bosnia, son, then you will actually be Muslim. And so what you could do is you could play as Bosnia, you can form Yugo, then once you're Yugo, you can form Central Europe, and then you can have, the Muslim HRE. With states in both the Ottoman and Austrian empires, forming Yugoslavia is going to be quite the challenge for any Balkan nation, including Bosnia, son. Montenegro was the first of our Balkan hills to die upon. Let us now have a look at what happens if you start the game as their Serbian kin under the house. I can't pronounce this. I apologize. We'll try Kara Devic, and Obrenovic. Okay. Serbia. True, but have you considered a fourth Serbia? Our next hill to die upon is the Dedinje in Belgrade, where this family has established their royal residence after taking power from the other dynasty, who had resided in the park at the bottom of the hill. The struggle between the two dynasties is represented by the Throne of Thorns journal entry. The current ruler may launch a campaign to build support, offering various incentives to communities or interest groups in return for their loyalty. So we will have ourselves an event here. Made promise left and right without much thought. Who is the rightful ruler of Serbia? And we do have a little bit of new art. A little bit of classroom. Haven't seen that one before. Very cool. We will have a Throne of Thorns, where we can launch a campaign, slander the rival dynasty. We will have dynastic loyalty. If triggered, completes Here to Stay, and if failed, completes the Reckoning. Can we choose which of these we go with? The house is one of the two contending Serb royal houses. They descended from Novic, leader of Second Serbian Uprising and founder of the autonomous Principality of Serbia. Supporters of them typically favored improved relations with Austria. The other house, one of the two contending royal houses, are descended from Karađorđe, the leader of the ill-fated First Serbian Uprising against the Ottoman Empire. Supporters of them typically favor improved relations with Russia. Should a country fall on hard times, the other dynasty may sweep away support. Dynastic loyalty represents the Serbian population's support for keeping the ruling dynasty on the throne as opposed to their rivals. The ruling dynasty must gain enough support to prevent the opposition from voicing a claim. Failing to do so will cause them to lose the throne and stagnate national growth. Following the conditions will advance the dynastic loyalty. And so here's how we get extra loyalty. High ruler popularity, low popularity of rival claimants, high legitimacy, high standard of living, fraction of loyalists, non-marginalized interest groups in opposition approve above for approval by clout. Interesting. So currently, the other country that has content that forces you to kind of play things a little slow is Brazil. Because of the magnanimous monarch, you don't want to generate revolutions, because just doing that will give you negative ticks on the journal entry. It's interesting that this is maybe doing something to a similar extent where you care about the opposition. We don't see too many events where that's the case, so kind of a little bit of a neat one to see for us there. Has a censorship or outlawed dissent enacted, not being a subject. Each major power or great power is supporting our independence, or events are other choices, and the following depletes our dynastic loyalty. Low ruler popularity, high popularity of rival claimants, low legitimacy, so also high taxes drive this, a low standard of living, fraction of radicals, non-marginalized interest groups in opposition below -4 approval by clout, negative authority, a negative bureaucracy. Okay. Positive balance or positive relations with overlord, events or other choices. So they want you to be say no to all the Ottomans, basically. Should one house lose control, the other begins a similar version of the journal entry, so power can change hands a series of times until someone finally gets dynastic loyalty to 100 and cements their power. We will see launch campaign. Preparations will begin, and soon we will abandon the idea forever to choose between one of the following until the campaign's ending. We will get forced campaign, definitely, giving us some malices of both approval and some landowner stuff and some expenses. And then we will also... chosen level of expense will determine the effectiveness of investment levels to visit states and our popularity for years to come. Okay, so you're just trying to close out the entry faster? Fair enough. Slander rival dynasty is also an option where we will be able to get slandered with pamphlets. We will get some expenses, either authority or the gold. One of the following. All right. What does slandered with pamphlets do exactly? We do not know. Interesting. The feud has deep roots within the military. It looks like we get an event here. We will have harassing Sunni and Jewish neighborhoods with the guys under the command of this gentleman here, who is hardly a gentleman, harassing minorities like that. We will also have clerical publicity. The Orthodox Church has offered to aid us in our cause to weaken this guy's influence on the people. Descendants of the deserters shall not have a voice in Serbia. After dealing with domestic strife, Serbia can partially benefit from the recent changes to Liberty desire to seek its independence. Building a large army can give a significant boost, though with the Ottomans having so many troops, perhaps it's best to use the support separatism diplomatic action covered in Dev Diary 154 to inspire Serbian movement within Ottoman territory, sparking the Eastern Crisis. And so that will be, for us, Serbia. Coming in, we have the Greek Bavorocracy. The next hill to die on, a lot of hills, is Lycabettus Hill in Athens, overlooking the palace of King Otto, the promontory Bavarian pride in Greece. Rejoice, Bavarians, coming with the National Awakening, is also a brand new journal entry for Greece. Bavorocracy. The journal entry models the highly contentious rule of Otto the Young and only, spoiler alert, Bavarian king of Greece. You not supposed to spoil this. You gotta wait longer since the release. The king and the Bavarian clique surrounding him assumed the rule of Greece in 1832 following the successful Greek War of Independence against the Ottomans. Otto was not the first of the first pick of the great powers for that post. The honor would have gone to the late King of Belgium, Leopold I, nor was he the Greek choice, as the Greeks were not even consulted in the matter, womp womp. But he was judged to be sufficiently disconnected from great power rivalries to be an acceptable candidate for the throne. Interesting that the way that's kind of how they decided, it's like, look, this guy's not really close to any of us. It seems fine enough, and thus assumed the throne at the grand old age of 17. Yikes. It's a little early, a little young to be governing a nation, probably. But shout out to the one guy who was king before, or prince, before it ended. So we will have the Bavarocratic ire, is something that can build. Option to convert to Eastern Orthodoxy here for us. Looks like we have that this will complete if we have autocracy and home affairs equal to 1, and we allow election. We've enacted any of elected bureaucrats. Rights of assembly protects speech, legitimacy is greater than 75, and then if triggered, we get a civilizer king of the Hellenes. If failed, then we will get the downfall of King Otto. Initially somewhat popular monarch, the devoutly Christian Otto was viewed with skepticism by his more devout Orthodox subjects after it became clear he had no intention of converting. Like many contemporary Philhellenes, he seemed more interested in activities and ideas of the Greeks of antiquity than those of his actual subjects. Man, this is probably just still such a vibe. And his over-reliance on Bavarian aides and ministers did little to endear him in the hearts of the native Greeks. The authoritarian rule in the Bavarians of Greece would eventually lead to much unrest and a few uprisings, and even the establishment of the constitutional monarchy in 1843 would not be enough to save the king, who would be ousted from the throne some 2 decades later. This journal entry will allow you to either let history play out somewhat historical fashion, with Otto being deposed and replaced by a Dane. Shudder. Yikes. Count on the Swedes to hate the Danes, right? When we were in Sweden, they served us this pastry, and I made sure to tell them that I really enjoyed the Danish. Or explore alt historical scenarios like Otto clinging on to power, other candidates assuming the throne, or the early rise of a republic. We will see the ire here, and we will see some conditions that advance it, and some conditions that deplete the ire. Owning Greek homeland states, so I guess if you peel a lot off the Ottomans, they won't mind very much winning a war, fielding more than 20 battalions, and then kind of have an inverse of some of this stuff, and some legitimacy stuff on the other side of things. While securing the Othonian rule will not be an easy task, there are steps you can take to facilitate it, securing the loyalty of the Klefts by enrolling them into the army, and doing your best to realize this so-called Magali idea will work wonders in terms of stabilizing the Otto's rule, or the stability of Otto's rules, not the Ottos who would be like the Ottomans, right? Or this Otto. This Otto is not the Ottomans. While entrenching Othonian rule in Greece will hold its rewards of its own, arranging for his downfall may prove advantageous in the long run. So we will have some stuff. He loses experience and political appointee, and he gains autocracy, gets Hellenic order. What does Hellenic order give, though? gets Hellenic freedoms and choose one of the following: Athenian Renaissance and Athenian staff reforms. Looks like we're not really seeing the modifiers here. And the end will bring in a Dane, who will get the Second Hellenic Republic. The new foreign king will come with the following ideologies: Danish reformer, British market liberal, Russian royalist. Okay, so, I'll ask to select one of the princes, and then we could select someone with a particular ideology. All right, fair enough. Greece also benefits from the free updates content covered in Dev Diary 155, and the latter is one of the nations forming the Balkan League. Perhaps you will turn your erstwhile allies to resort Byzantium. Greece stands out to benefit from certain crises to the east. We see the Eastern Crisis. Our next hill, which we are going to die on, is the peak of the Eastern Crisis, which faced the Ottoman Empire in the 1870s, leading to the war with Russia, the 1878 Treaty of Berlin, and the release of Bulgaria. Uprisings were nothing new in the Ottoman Empire, but after raising taxes to cover debts used to modernize infrastructure and reform the navy, the third biggest in the world in 1875, unprecedented wave of revolts sprung up in the Balkan territories. The brutality of the Ottoman response, especially the April uprising of 1876, published in the Western press as the Bulgarian horrors and crime of the century, significantly harmed Ottoman's relations with the British. The below flavor text is a historical quote from the time, though our game search is such an event can occur after cutting down any separatist movement. So we will see a little bit of a quote here. The number of children killed by these massacres is something enormous. Wow, this is already a grim quote. They were often spitted on bayonets, and we have several stories from eyewitnesses who saw little babes carried about the streets, both here and Oligopoly, on the point of bayonets. Yikes. Big yikes. That's the quite big yikes. We have infamy increased by 30. These are horrific lies. Yikes. Our contacts in Great Britain will vouch for us. Okay, we only get 10 infamy. Public naming of this guy for the crimes. Our infamy will only increase by 15. The armed forces don't like it. And the next rebels will get much worse. Increases infamy by 50. Yikes. And we get 20 years of suppression impact on political movements and political activism. I mean, this just, like... I guess it's kind of cute if you're like turning a corner and going high infamy, you just don't care, and this is actually something that's useful, but that's a lot of infamy. If the infamy penalty here seems harsh, note that the British government had a policy of protecting the Ottoman Empire against Russian advances, and it was largely due to the Ottomans' horrific reputation, not honorific, after these crimes that England did not intervene during the Russo-Turkish War of 1877 and 78. In game, the Eastern Crisis journal entry has similar effects to Springtimes of the People, covered by my colleague Victoria last week. An added difficulty, however, is the Empire's subjects will receive 0.35 Liberty Desire, among other benefits. So we will get a little bit of a crisis and a growing number of secessionist movements similar to Springtime of the People, the Great Eastern Crisis. And so we'll complete if Rumelian integrity has reached 100%, and we keep kind of things together in other ways. We will have the integrity represent the stability of the Balkans, a strategic region under threat by the secessionist political movements. Integrity is tracked in the Great Eastern Journal entry. Movement activism for all the secessionist political movements in the Ottoman Empire must be below 75 to increase. The following conditions increase the Rumelian integrity. Legitimacy 50 or above, not at war. Interesting. We see, like, for China, the resolving the opium thing being not at war as well is kind of one of these other instances where not being at war is necessary for, like, a journal. Ottoman Empire does not have a growing secession political movement. Ottoman Empire has recently crushed a succession. We will get each movement will be boosted by the following for the duration of the JE. Extra attraction, activism, pop attraction. Yeah, so like similar to Springtime of the Peoples that we kind of reviewed. I think it was last week. Every Ottoman subject will receive a rebellious opportunity, extra liberty desire. That's quite a lot of liberty desire, so it'll be easy to break free. And so this also makes it so you can maintain higher relations and high liberty desire, which can be nice in some situations. Because when your overlord turns on you, often they put in annoying stuff on you, like increased taxes and this type of thing, which is really bad if you're I remember, like, as the EIC, it was just super, super bad when Britain did that on the pre-release build, when, like, I think they would take 40% of your income anyways, and so then when they increased the tax, it was much worse. And I think the number is a lot smaller. I'm not sure what it is in terms of how much of that subject type goes to your overlord, but it was bigger before release. And so when you played the EIC and you're trying to break free, and then Great Britain had bad relations, and then they hit you with the extra taxes, it was so painful. Rebels may be the least of Ottomans concerned, however, as Russia will also receive a journal entry encouraging them to liberate Bulgaria and seize Kars. Crisis and opportunity. We will see. Is this Russia's version? Crisis and opportunity. So they will get a journal entry that also tracks the integrity. Interesting. Meanwhile, should Russia make their play, Austria is unlikely to stand by. They too, if they have an interested lobby, will receive a journal entry encouraging them to join the fray and seize control of Bosnia. So we will have the Bosnian question, which is going to be Austria's version. And okay, we have diplomatic opportunity plus 10% influence. The Bosnian question, possible event effects. Choose one of the following. The territories of Bosnia will be reorganized under a Bosnian protectorate. All the following. Bosnia will be annexed into Austria, causes a diplomatic incident with the former owner of Bosnia, or they will be a puppet. And if we have triple monarchy, they get annexed into an Austrian South Slavic subject, and instead of you taking kind of them directly. Should the Ottomans survive this gauntlet of rebellion and warlike neighbors, they will be rewarded for their efforts, though perhaps the greatest reward is survival itself. Maybe the best reward is the friends we made on along the way when we were bayoneting babies. Yeah. Okay. Well, we will get controlled Eastern crisis, a little bit of bureaucracy, authority, and legitimacy, and we will get that for 5 years. And it's not even a decaying modifier. Interesting. Most modifiers are decaying. This one looks like it doesn't. Okay. And should the Ottoman Empire fail to keep Rumelian integrity, and see screenshot further above, together within 10 years, expect the crisis to continue, slowly fading away over the next decade. Crisis unchecked. Okay. Slowly fading, though. Alright, fair enough. So many Ottomans, hills to die on, and we haven't even met the Bulgarians yet, which they have some hills too. It turns out, in the region of Anatolia and the Balkans, there are actually a lot of hills. Yeah, shout out to hills. So we will have Bulgaria, Prussia of the Balkans. Any Bulgarians in chat? How do we feel about being called Prussian of the Balkans? I feel like... Yeah, I think you could take this one of two ways. One, it's like a compliment, but two, we're the Bulgarians of the Balkans, right? Maybe Prussia is the Bulgaria of North Germany, eh? But okay, continuing on. The nation of Bulgaria finds itself in a sorry position of not even having a hill to die on. Womp womp. For they're not yet back on the map. Would you be... not on any map you know of, okay? Okay? The real map, we know where the real map is. Would you be so inclined to remedy this? There could be a couple of ways you could go about it. The quickest and easiest, which is, of course, simply start as the Ottomans and release Bulgaria as an independent nation. Alternatively, you could opt into either provoking a Bulgarian succession and siding with the subsequent rebellion, or liberating Bulgaria as Russia, which will fire a new event, which will allow you to switch to the young Bulgarian nation afterwards, amongst other options. Okay, so now you have a cool way of starting. That's neat. Okay. I mean, I would probably still just start and release. We get the Bulgarian revival. Independence of Bulgaria has exposed cracks in the Ottoman sphere. Those cracks were there. What do you think the sick man of Europe is? And we're not talking about, people from northwest, India. We're talking about the different type of sick. And so we will gain a fortuitous opportunity to expand our sphere of influence in the Balkans. And so, okay. Change players actively controlled country from Russia to Bulgaria. So you could do this in Iron Man, I suppose. Although I think you could release play as in Iron Man as well. Upon independence, Bulgaria will have to face its first choice of whether or not to declare monarchy to pursue the path of republicanism. All right, so republicanism slash monarchy. We've been going a little bit over an hour, so if you wanted to get up and take a walk, maybe do a few push-ups, this type of thing, now would be a good time because we're about halfway through this dev diary. Although we did do that survey before, so if you wanted to pause and do that, maybe get the blood flowing, maybe feel a little bit better, this type of thing. But we, as an I in this chair, and we're going to continue on. Although maybe we'll take a swig of water because it's important to stay hydrated as well. Depending on when the event above takes place, you may have one or several historical candidates as an option, including a monarchy led by either Alexander von Battenberg or Ferdinand von Saxe-Coburg. Gotha. Is this many hyphens allowed? Someone call an adult. As well as the Republic under Stefan Stambolov. There are also generic fallback options for either a monarchy or republic, should none of the historical candidates be available at the time. While the nation has now been liberated, sovereignty is by no means secured, as the Ottomans will not go down without a fight. Okay. If that wasn't enough, the rival claimants in the Balkans can be found in any direction, competing with Bulgaria over control of their shattered homelands. Yeah, this is the Balkan question indeed. Lots of hills to die on. To deal with the looming threat, Bulgaria will have to establish a formidable army to defend its borders and stake its claims, which finally leads us to the Prussia of the Balkans journal entry, where we will have a little bit of a thing. We'll complete if we have 1,000 army power projection. Man, it's been a while since we've looked at army power projection because we haven't played in a hot minute, but that sounds like a lot to me. And then if completed, we will get Prussia, the Balkans, and definitely 1,000 or 100 prestige, which that's going to bump you up to major power, probably guaranteed, right? I forget like what values are kind of normalish, but that sounds about right. Make it really easy to hit, quite a lot easier to hit a GP as well. We get militarization complete, decaying for 20 years. They really generally don't like giving permanent modifiers, just decaying modifiers, but when you have a decaying modifier for 20 years and you're maybe getting it 20 years into game, it's going to be around to some extent for a quarter of the remainder of the game. And so you can look at it, since it's a decaying modifier, as it being in total active for 12.5% of the entire game, something like this, or of the entire rest of the game. In terms of like the way you look at it, I think I like the way that they do this with decaying modifiers, generally speaking, as an approach to prevent a bunch of strange modifier stacking. But with that said, 10% conscriptable battalions, 20. Oh wow, that's big. 20 offense and defense, and 25% morale recovery. See, how do you? That's just a really big number, right? I guess flat is way more important. Maybe it's not that big a number. Flat is a lot more effective than the percentage values. All right, fair enough, but that's quite a big bonus though. In terms of how stuff actually affects things. Because Prussia doesn't get the Prussia of the North Germany, where they get army offense and defense, right? They do not have any flavor for this. But generally speaking, they also don't like to give any mechanical advantages too many mechanical advantages to GPs, and tend to do it more for these smaller powers, just because like design philosophy of not having like modifier stacking of like any kind, or really modifiers in general that are unique to nations. But to complete this journal entry, one will have to engage in the process of rapid militarization and juggle the needs of the civilian economy with those of the army to become the uncontested powerhouse of the Balkans. Of course, having a huge army means nothing if you're not willing to willing to use it, which brings us to the event, the fire upon the successful completion of the journal entry and militarization process. We claim the Balkans. To Sarengrad we march, only a unified Yugo. This is the beginning of the Bulgarian Renaissance, so it looks like we'll have two options of expansion and one of maybe peacetime. The first option sets you on a path of war, with the end goal being to ensure that Bulgaria stretches from the Ionian to the Black Sea, with the third new Bulgarian Empire. So that's a pretty big one, lots of claims, so this seems pretty strong. Got some nice content, especially if you have a decent sized army and those army bonuses. This is going to be something that's like well within your grasp. Plus, who are you having to fight here? Just the Ottomans? Yeah. Alternatively, looks like we also have the big Monty here. Or is it the full Monty? The Montenegro looking caked up. Alternatively, one may embrace their inner Yugoslav and seek out a unified nation for all Slavs of the Balkans. Choosing this option, unsurprisingly, enables the ability to form Yugoslavia, which Bulgaria is otherwise barred from. Yugoslavia is going to be a nice big formable, especially with your other lands over here. For them. So you will get the ability to form it. You will get plus 20% decaying infamy decay, plus 20% influence. And this is a major formable as well. So you can do this diplomatically. So, a lot more ways to actually make use of the Yugoslavia tag, which has been in game for like forever. It's just like, don't get it that often. You will not only retain, well, you have to play some of these nations to get it. Retain your Bulgarian primary culture in addition to other Yugoslav cultures. You will also get a new map color with a unique set of flags. The flag of the monarchist Yugoslavia as formed by Bulgaria. This is the beginning of Bulgarian Renaissance. This is, of course, the third option. You will get decaying for 20 years, minus 20% loan interest rate. Kind of a strange modifier. This is enough to put you into 0% tax, and it's like way more than enough if you stack all the other modifiers, if I'm not mistaken, as long as you're a GP, right? Extra tax spread and 20% capitalist investment contribution efficiency. That's quite a lot. It's got me feeling some kind of mixed way. I generally like the way they use decaying modifiers, but they never give any to the big countries, just to the small countries, and this seems like a very intentional design choice. I don't know how I feel about it, as in I don't know how I feel about it, not as in I think this is bad, but it is quite striking because we're seeing them add more and more of these types of modifiers whenever they do flavor, but they just don't like to do them in particular on, I think, so here's the thing is, I think a lot of players want something other than, there was a lot of feedback with the India patch, I think, in my opinion, where people went through this actually pretty hard journal entry to do. It was really hard like the first week or the first 4 days before they made it way easier. And then once you did it, you kind of just got a nothing burger at the end, and it didn't feel that good because players are accustomed to getting some level of rewards for completing something that feels difficult or this type of thing. And so they want to give players rewards, but still they have this design philosophy where, look, you don't get better at making furniture because you're an Ottoman. You're in the Ottomans. You don't get better at making railways and guns because you're North German. Like you don't have advantages by virtue of being a specific country, and this is something that's really entrenched in kind of the design philosophy of Victoria 3. But I think community in general pushes back against this because they want stuff that makes runs feel different, and I want stuff that makes runs feel different too. I want different decisions to feel different. Or different countries to feel different because of various things. And we're seeing a little bit more of them kind of leaning into providing advantages, but then they're putting this decaying on there. Because they don't want this to be around forever. They don't want it to be permanent. They don't want you to stack modifiers. Generally speaking, you can't stack modifiers because a lot of these are country-specific. To some extent, they've also... with the importance of companies and with the fact that companies are in different locations and this type of thing, you also get a different level of specialization with that. But it is kind of interesting to see the way that they're kind of navigating forward on this, because I think that the overall design philosophy of being super sandboxy is at odds with, I think, large segments of the community, although some I think like it. I think I like it generally speaking, but I think it's I would like to see a little bit more flavor and mechanical aspects that differentiate it. I would just prefer the mechanics to be dynamic enough that other countries can get like unique benefits that are the same as another country's, but the start condition leaves you more predisposed towards particular advantages and disadvantages a little bit more, so that different runs feel different. But continuing on, because we should be continuing here, we have the Balkan League. The Ottoman power went downhill, very much pun intended, womp womp, as their ex-subjects saw an opportunity to band together in an effort to recover their homelands, a summit that they seem very much willing to die upon. The Balkan League, an alliance of Montenegro, Serbia, Greece, and Bulgaria, First waged the Balkan War in 1912, successfully conquering much of the Ottoman Empire's remaining European territory. In 1912, fairly late game in terms of Victoria 3, we've designed a Balkan League content to be more generalized to accommodate for the cuts and tears that you, my dear player, may have cut through the tapestry of history. At any point, if the 4 historical members of the League, provided that they are on the map at the time, are all free from subjecthood and the Ottomans are in the Eastern Crisis or at war with a great power, then the League can form and you will get the Balkan League. Very cool. I imagine this doesn't come up too often, though, because it's super late game, right? But you can force the Balkan League if you're RPing, so this is really kind of an RP journal entry more than anything else. Montenegro will answer the call. Of course, when they call the banners, we answer the call, as one does. In our testing, we generally find that these nations have a much harder time against the Ottoman Empire than they did historically. Thus, we've added tools for the smaller nations to stand a chance. I'm expecting to see some big fat bonuses, but, like, honestly, this late in the game, don't really mind countries getting big fat bonuses. We'll see the Balkan League's journal entry, and we will see a bunch of actions that we can take inside the League. And then we will complete if 10 of these states are free from the Balkans in this Europe, and we will fail if window opportunity closes, Montenegro loses the Balkan War, or Montenegro rejects to join the Balkan League. So I'm guessing this is an event from their perspective. Dedicated military research. This will level the technological playing field by giving the Balkan League any military technology the Ottomans may have that they don't possess themselves, provided they can convince a great power to give it to them. However, this will stifle their civilian research for some time. Interesting. Well, I think as the player, you're not going to be behind at this point, but we do see... Okay, it's just research speed, and... Oh, it's research speed plus the free text. Interesting. So maybe there's a strategy where you're wanting to lean into this, so you go 0 military tech for the longest time. It's kind of painful to get the negative research speed, though, but it's going to be indefinitely, like, for the end of the war. So just for the duration of the war, you just only research mil. So it's actually probably okay. It just inhibits your tech spread. This allows you to add Ottoman subjects as allies in the upcoming war. However, first you'll need to support them with Support Independence Treaty article. So this is Expand the League. And so really cool how this is leaning on some of the mechanics that they established in the last patch with regard to treaties. So you can use the treaty to kind of, what is it, influence the journal entry and interact, that's the word I was looking for, with the journal entry. We have overwork armed industries. Make your workers work until they drop is not good for their health. Nope. Though it is great for making the weapons you'll need to provide your troops. That's true. Fair enough. We will get overworked armed industries, which will give us output. So minus 20% authority. So this is kind of significant now that authority is pretty useful for the companies. We will also get extra radicals from low legitimacy. That's something we could deal with. Plus 100% mortality. That's a percent modifier, not a flat modifier. But plus output. Plus output's real strong, because if you have input costs of 80 and output of 100, what it does is it's not like throughput. It just increases the output. So if you have 30%, 35% output, instead of inputs of 80, output of 100, you'll go from inputs of 80, output of 135, which is more than doubling, very near tripling the marginal value of what you're putting out. So generally speaking, output modifiers are very rare in Victoria 3. And to some extent, I guess you can specialize during this time period at this stuff, because you can probably crank the price of this stuff so low and really dump it into other markets. But it's probably too narrow a band to, like, really develop an economy based on this, and it's also, you're just so late in the game. So really making concessions to really strong bonuses when it's this late in the game is probably really not going to influence any weird sort of meta strategies, but on a, like, just abstract power level, this is a really strong modifier. Muster conscripts. These nations were famously dedicated to the war effort. Once the war starts, players may pull men from the fields to increase their conscriptable battalions and training rates, though there is some risk your forces starve if you haven't prepared adequately. We will get extra conscriptable battalions and training rate and minus agriculture. Trying to remember, there's... No. I was thinking the training rate, like, training rate's actually, like, a modifier that's, like, bugged right now. Who was it? Trying to think. the name of the content creator who made a video about it somewhat recently. But the way that it's bugged because of recruiting of both officers and soldiers will sometimes just mechanically throttle you in a way that should not be the case. Data time lapses, there's the one. And so we will have the loud car outside, but also we will resign. And by resign, I mean resign ourselves to our fate that the car will be allowed outside. But a formal resignation from the alliance will neutralize our diplomatic stance, but we will be seen as a traitor to the Balkan League. Otherwise, it's time to start the Balkan War. If the Ottoman Empire's strength seems insurmountable, here they are allied with the British Empire. It may be wise to seek your allies amongst the own great powers. Makes sense. Seems fair enough. Combined armor power projection of the League is 367, and then Ottomans is 4,000, so that is a little bit of a vibe. One could see if any of the great powers are supporting independence of Ottoman subjects, in which case you are able to bring them in each side during the said subject of the League. For example, here, Walachia's independence was guaranteed by Russia. Also, after guaranteeing their independence and adding them to the League, it looks like our side has a chance. Does it, though? Does it? Looks like we actually have a bigger army. In this particular alternate, is also the AI just in general is much more aggressive about committing troops if they have a land border to a front. And so Russia's probably going to contribute more. In this particularly alternative history, Wallachia does indeed have been the turning point that starts the war. Each nation will receive war goals to return their homelands or independence for the newly added members, like Wallachia in this example. And so we will have humiliate the Ottoman Empire, of course, independence, and we will have return people to or return states to the various nations, return cars put in as the primary on Russia, and then the end of an era. It is done. The Ottoman Empire has finally been driven out of the Balkans, with its former territories now belonging to rightful owners. The Balkan League has proven a successful initiative, and then we will get a victorious Balkan League ally for 20 years, giving us 25% influence. Probably at the point you would get this, influence is not that important. I think influence doesn't scale well in the late game. Because it helps for getting a bunch of stuff in place. Kind of a strong modifier, but not going to be that great this late in the game. Prestige is kind of nice if you're doing anything world conquesty, because it helps to pull the average rank down towards minor power so you can subjugate people. An extra technology research speed, very strong modifier, but if we're getting this, if we have to be in 1912 to pop this, 20 years is kind of functionally the rest of the game. But it is a decaying modifier, so if this was 40 years, it would be stronger, even though it's close to the game end either way, because you'd only be half decayed, basically, by the end of the game. Historically, before the First Balkan War had ever been concluded, tensions between the allies began to began to chafe. There were disagreements about who should receive which newly conquered hills, and how much to honor pre-war agreements. I love that this is all about the hills. The hills are alive with the sound of violence. It wasn't long before Bulgaria, which had only been a nation for 35 years, found itself at war with the rest of the Balkan League. The events of the Second Balkan War were the inspiration for the Spoils of War journal entry, where we will have, this will be 14 years, so this really is like the rest of the game at this point. At least 3 states in Danubia, in terms to complete this, is Romanian homeland belongs to Wallachia, so I'm assuming we're in Wallachia's perspective. If completed, 20% of Romanian pop in Wallachia become loyalists. That's quite a lot, and we will get some authority and legitimacy decaying over 20 years, but yeah, okay, that's the rest of the game. Next week, we will be joined by the art team, who will die on their own hills. You heard it here first. Paradox will sacrifice their own art team at the altar of making good games. They will perform human sacrifice. This is terrible. Probably adorned with vineyards or tea plantations, with the clouds opening above to spotlight their beautiful work. You heard it here first. A guarantee rework of the art for vineyards promised by the developers. This, of course, is sarcastic. Don't expect a reworked version of that, but expect a new one of tea plantations. Also not sarcastic. The prickly precipice of national pride is the last hill I will die upon it today. In the meantime, one last word for the narrative design of Victoria, who was to be shouting down for the Sierra of books. May your sacrifices be glorious, and a happy Thursday. Let's go! Let's go! The happy sandwich. We got him. Chris batting 100 for 100 Dev Diaries, happy Thursdaying properly in a salutation sandwich. Everyone knows that happy salutations belong in sandwich format with a happy at the beginning and a happy at the end, and Chris has succeeded in that regard. And so let's get on here. Hello, this is Victoria. One may wonder which hill I would die on. This answer requires an image. We were doing so well. So last week we got the first happy Thursday we ever got from Victoria, and we had such a golden opportunity here. We had such an opportunity. We almost had a quadruple happy Thursday. If he did the sandwich and Victoria did the sandwich, we would have had 4 happy Thursdays. And that's if you're not even counting my happy Thursdays, in which case we would have had 6. That's a lot. And so little bit of a missed opportunity here, but we also do get to see books, which we like books. We have a couple books sitting around. We also have a bunch of books in the closet. We have crates of books. We have a book we recently read on Putin. Yeah. We could pull out a book crate. Let's not do a book crate thing. Book crate reveal. We have a bunch of chess books over here. The Princess of Chess, Judith Polgar, who, if the title doesn't kind of reveal that, she was really, really good at chess. Just unquestionably the strongest female player of all time. But, continuing on, we will see Balkans, Mark Mauser. We will see 1848, Year of Revolution. We will see For God and For Kaiser. Which one's more important? Who knows? And then we will see Age of Revolutions, the Age of Capital. Age of Capital might be something I would be interested in. We see Benedict Anderson, which was cited in her... last week, I think, maybe it was the week before, Habsburg Empire, or it wasn't cited, it was 2 weeks ago. Imagine Communities was the name of the Dev Diary, I think. We see the Habsburg Empire. I hear that this book has a really big chin on the cover. We will see Realm of the Black Mountains, History of Montenegro. So it does appear that we are, of course, doing our research here. This is a pile of books, yes it is, of physical books that we have read over the course of the development of Update 1.10 and National Awakening. I wonder if this means that they have split duties, or if they've each read all the books. I imagine it's split duties, and they have each kind of segmented doing the content for individual nations out amongst themselves, rather than all reading the same books. We've received some requests for lists on the subject matter, so be pleased to are pleased to provide our bibliography. So this is just going to be a bibliography. Ooh. We also have some stuff not pictured. Marx, of course, that name does leap off the page a little bit. I don't think that these are sources that we have read too much of, or at all, because I don't read as much history stuff, and especially not as much during or about this time period. I've read a couple economic texts more about this time period, but that's less to do with history. And so I'm just going to kind of scroll through these rather than read them, because I don't have anything substantive to add to like just the appearance of them. If you wanted to take a closer look, you can check out the Dev Diary. Not included are the uncountably numerous web pages that we have visited over the course of our research, of which we have kept no records. Also included are works in which we did engage on beyond quoting for flavor text. For those interested in the latter, we typically include attributions within our localization files appended to the string in question. Were I ever to die, assuredly you will, we all die, I would like to do so in a comfortable armchair several minutes after completing the last incomplete book in my collection. This is the closest I may come to the fulfillment, which is the conclusion, of course, of the longest, I think, Dev Diary we've ever done. And considering we did the survey at the start, this is almost this isn't quite the longest one-shot video I've ever recorded, but it is the second longest. The longest was a Japan start tutorial. But that's it. That's all for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this massive hill of a Dev Diary, plus, of course, the survey. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe. We also have, if you wanted to buy the game, through their, or buy the DLC through their website. We do have code Generalist in all caps. As far as I understand, our code can be used for games other than EU5. It doesn't give you a discount, but it does send 12% of the sale our way. So if you're interested in supporting the channel in that way, it is mildly inconvenient, but you can do that. And other than all that, have a happy Thursday.